Know this, both competitors gave it their absolute all this year. Neither one of these TVs are a loser, but the Hisense U8G is going to be the winner. But I'm going to say this right now, just barely, okay? And we're going to talk about why that is. So if you are short on time, quick answer, Hisense U8G takes it. Some people were like, well, of course it was going to, it's the more expensive TV. You would have no idea how wrong you guys are. I've been here for a few hours now, just literally not only calibrating, it got to a point where I started using the TCL as a reference monitor, jumped back to the Hisense as a reference monitor. These two are freaking equivalent as hell. And I mean in a lot of areas, okay? So the one area it's not equivalent, as you guys are clearly seeing, color. The U8G just has more vibrant, high-end quantum dots, and that's going to make a huge difference when paired with the extra peak brightness. You're not getting around that. That's just ultimately what ended up clinching it for Hisense. If you start comparing lower tier models or something in a similar price range, the results are absolutely going to favor this TCL. So if you were looking at maybe a U6G, maybe a U7G, it might actually end up being the 5 series TCL over here just dominates, because this thing not only held its own with the U8G, but so much so that it's disturbing. It has less posterization on, really challenging images. Images like this, you guys can't really see all that well, so I'll wait till it passes, but essentially like really near black stuff, because it doesn't have the lower peak brightness, or the higher peak brightness, it doesn't overexpose as much, so blacks don't get as gray on really challenging near black scenes. And honestly speaking, I'm shocked. I'm literally blown away at the clarity coming off of the TCL 5 series. So the clarity is so tack sharp on things like faces and like all kinds of stuff. And we're gonna jump into it. I'm gonna show you guys what I'm talking about, but like, boy, oh boy, did I didn't expect that. So I just kind of wanted to open it up like that so you guys kind of know what to expect. You guys know essentially where I'm coming from. And now we're going to talk about a little bit more of the finer things that kind of got me to that conclusion. Now, again, it's important to note that this is not going to be a 100% accurate comparison. There's no way to do that on YouTube. I can't show you the difference between all of this stuff 100%, but you'll get a good damn idea real quick, as you guys are probably seeing already. Okay, so for starters, the thing with the Hisense is that it lacks clarity. I think that's going to be one of the more apparent things. It's really a struggler when you get to, the details. And I mean tiny details like rocks in the sand or like stitching on clothing. It really does have a hard time rendering that without being blurry. And I think that's its biggest weakness. It's not very good. I think out of all the manufacturers, Hisense is the worst as far as picture clarity. And that's just honest. They need to improve that, because even Vizio is beating them. And Vizio is like the buggiest brand out there. So that's definitely an area where Hisense needs to deliver next year. Because boy, when I tell you, this 5 series is very clear, I'm not joking. It's more clear, by the way, than the Hisense in almost every example I can throw out. Like the face here, absolutely more clear. Now, of course, she looked overly orange because, you can't rely on camera science and all that. It's auto adjusting on the fly. So don't take these colors as 100%, but do understand that there are some differences. And the difference that you're going to see in the clarity is huge with the TCL 5 series. Now, Hisense, again, with that color, though, you're going to see every nuanced color, every in-between color of really all your primaries. So reds, greens, blues, but even the subtle colors like magentas, the little hues in the face, all these kinds of separate tonality things are really good. One area clarity is better is here, where you see little particles that are bright. Hisense is going to take that every day of the week because it has the extra brightness to push out, and so the contrast is able to get good. Now, both are equally tight as far as contrast, and that's something I wanted to show you guys. If you look at this image, you can kind of see what I'm talking about as far as the contrast between these two displays. You can see that, again, the Hisense to the left is going to have really, really good clarity. However, when you look at the TCL, it's right there. Now, one thing that shocked me about the TCL is its highlight rendering capabilities. It has the ability to hone in on what's supposed to be bright, like this big blast of lightning, and it doesn't dim it down at all. Where on the Hisense, it's actually dimmer, as I'm looking at it with my naked eye, than the TCL. This changes how contrast renders, and this is where TCL starts pulling ahead of Hisense, because now, in scenes like this, where you have brightness popping off, if you look at the character's face, you're going to notice that there's going to be a lot more ambient glow from the lightning blast and flash back onto his face. These little subtle differences add to immersion, and the TCL 5 series has that, where the more expensive Hisense does not have that. Now, counteractively, Hisense has the better overall color, but that's kind of their only big claim to fame right now as we start talking about these differences for this particular test example. You can see it a little bit more here when you look at Endeavor to the right on the TCL 5 series, how the flame is just so luminous and very rich. It almost pops and explodes with almost a realistic and real world level of brightness. So even though this isn't brighter than the Hisense, it manages its brightness output better. Now, that is a really foreign concept for a lot of people. Some people goes, how could one thing be brighter than something that's clearly, has more nits? Again, if you go and you ramp up to your max nit range, you're not necessarily increasing brightness, you're just increasing the brightness output. You're not honing in on highlights and saying the fire right there on the right needs to be bright. And you're not, you know what I mean? You're not fine tuning it. And that's where the processing chips kind of come into play. And TCL has definitely pulled ahead of Hisense. So you have better highlight mapping and how they handle highlights. And then it's also clearer. I'm noticing more detail in Endeavor's armor. It's sharper, it's clearer. The Hisense is not doing a terrible job, but by comparison, I definitely notice more clarity on the TCL as far as that goes. So that's something that you guys might want to take note of. So now we're testing to see which one has better motion, and as I look at it with my naked eye, the Hisense U8G immediately slaughters the TCL 5 series. Everything is much more fluid, all the lights kind of rolling around in the environment, the screen in general, it's just greatly improved after that most recent update. That's not to say that what the TCL 5 series is doing is bad or anything, but there's definitely clearly a smooth nature of image quality that I'm just not seeing on the TCL by comparison. Hisense is making a lot more things look more three-dimensional, if you will, with the kind of processing that they're doing for motion. So they're getting a lot right in the motion regard, and I think that's something that if you like motion processing, that's important to note. Another thing that's important to note is I don't test these TVs outside of using motion processing. I don't find it to be very helpful or productive. So if you're somebody that wants to turn off all your motion processing, you're gonna have to go look at one of the industry purists, because I believe in motion processing. It's put there for a reason. It really works, and honestly, Hisense is doing a great job here. Again, TCL not too far behind. I don't want you to hear this and hear, oh, TCL is just losing, it's terrible, their motion is bad. They're literally right on Hisense's ass. Like, it's like neck and neck. Hisense is just a little bit smoother, but honestly, TCL is damn close. Both are brilliant at black levels, though. As you see, we're in a clearly dark environment, and honestly speaking, there is not much in the way of bloom on either of these TVs. Though if I was being honest, I did see a bit more of the, not gray black, but challenged black levels on the Hisense because it's brighter and it's outputting more. However, you can see here it does make a huge difference. Now, when images are in motion and you have a lot of things that are kind of transitioning scene to scene, different kinds of things, you're gonna notice a lot more that the Hisense is going to look better because it's giving you more out of your image quality. However, TCL has not fallen too far behind. I mean, I do find here it does look a little bit more plasticky. Don't know what it's gonna look like on YouTube with the final output, but yeah, it's something I'm definitely noticing, especially in this example here. She does look a lot more dead by comparison, but again, at the end of the day, it is what it is. It's not a highest end kind of television. It's not a flagship, so to speak, so it's not going to be able to deliver flagship level color. Now again, if it looks green or off, I've told you at the beginning of this video, not going to be 100%, so seriously, I can't stress, don't draw your own conclusions off of video footage. I'm sitting in front of it. I'm giving you the play-by-play. Take this as the read. But what I will tell you is they do get incredibly close to one another. And honestly speaking, that's where it gets uncomfortable because it's so close. You kind of find yourself wondering, how do I call this? I look at motion. I look at clarity. I look at black levels. I look at highlight mapping. I look at gaming features. I look at all the package presentation offerings. And honestly speaking, they are so equivalently spec'd that it's almost impossible to give one a higher grade over the other. Almost, until you start looking at the color and brightness advantages of the U8G, and that's really where it pulls ahead and it gives you that extra throw with the color volume. And then there are the premium features like the hands-free voice control, and then of course an industry first, a 100-day guarantee to try before you buy these TVs. So if you're not happy with it, or maybe you're unsure, you don't have to commit to anything. You don't have to have any regret for anything. Nobody else in the industry does that but Hisense, and that's worth mentioning. And now of course we're comparing these TVs, but again, it's important to compare every aspect of them, and that's kind of what I'm saying here. So in essence, I guess the moral of the story is, even if something is more expensive, it doesn't mean that it's just automatically going to run through, dominate, and clean house. There are areas where the Hisense definitely can take some tips from TCL, and I think that's something that we should be paying attention to when making our purchases. Now, for all intents and purposes, I want you guys to understand that even though Hisense does ultimately win, it is by a very narrow margin. I know I've stressed that in this video, but I really want to stress that it was so very close between these two TVs, and I think that speaks to just how competitive the market is getting. TCL is able to offer a very similar image to Hisense's flagship, and they're doing it for a lot less. And I think that's something that I think Hisense should be kind of nervous of, because that's a direct competitor and it's something to think about. Another area where TCL pulls ahead is in noise reduction. So if you don't want as much grain, TCL is going to have better noise reduction capabilities. They process it out better. And again, I think this goes down to what I've been saying from day one about the Hisense U8G. Their biggest weakness is their processing chipset. It's just not strong enough to be able to process the level of clarity as basically all the other manufacturers, and to be able to render out noise capabilities like everyone else is doing. What Hisense does better than everybody else is that they're giving you pop, they're giving you color, they're giving you shock, they're giving you awe, they're giving you a really wonderful image, and they're doing it for a lot less money than the competitors. All the bells and whistles, all the key features that a lot of you guys are going to be looking for, you're getting all of that stuff, but ultimately speaking, the areas that you fall short on, that's where TCL kind of comes in and picks up the slack. It's not as bright, so black levels can be a little darker and a little richer. You have better handling on clarity, which makes a huge difference as far as immersion goes. And honestly speaking, when you look at the entire offering, they again are so very, very similar that I really found myself, and I say this, but I'm telling you, I found myself struggling to pick a winner. I'm going to go with the U8G because of the reasons I've stated, but I can't stress that either way you go, you win. Now, if you were on the fence and you were like, which one do I pick? I need to buy one of these TVs. I would say buy the TCL 5 series because of the price point. That's not to say that it's the better TV overall and it dominates this comparison, but for the price, you are getting damn near a U8G. And when that's the case, I mean, you know, like you have a good 90% of everything the U8G is doing, and even benefits that it doesn't have. And that's important to note when we're talking about money. We're talking about comparisons and all this other stuff. And so hopefully this kind of helps you guys out. I want to thank you guys so much for watching the #1 brand in honesty. And until the next video, I'll see you guys later.